Good evening, everyone. I don't know if I'm audible. Can you hear me? Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. So, my name is Onyo Bazi, and on behalf of the Impact Tribe, I want to welcome everyone to the Skills Lab very first session. Welcome to all of you. So, before we dive into this heavy topic, right? The topic that we have, I just want to do a quick rundown of what the Impact Tribe is all about. So, in case you're new, the Impact Tribe is a global community of young change makers, visionaries, and leaders committed to driving positive transformation in their lives and communities. We are a network of purpose driven individuals who believe in the power of collaboration, leadership, and continuous growth to create meaningful and lasting impact. So, what then is our mission in the Impact Tribe? Well, our mission is to build a thriving community of passionate individuals who are equipped, empowered, and inspired to lead change, foster innovation, and also contribute to sustainable development across different sectors. Our vision is to be a globally recognized community where young people find clarity, purpose, and the support needed to maximize their potential while working together to solve pressing societal challenges. What then is the problem we are trying to solve or we are solving? So, many young people today struggle with lack of direction, limited access to opportunities, and a sense of isolation in their journey toward personal and professional growth. The absence of a strong support system often leaves them feeling lost and discouraged, preventing them from unlocking their full potential. Now, the Impact Tribe exists to bridge this gap by providing a safe, empowering, and resourceful community where individuals can find mentorship, collaboration, and opportunities to grow. Through leadership development, skill building, network, and access to opportunities, we are creating an environment where every member can thrive and make a difference. So I see some familiar faces, and you're all welcome. This session is very value packed, but also we have a time schedule that we're working with, and the speaker will be with us for just 30 minutes. So please keep all your questions because we have the Q&A session, right? So grab something to write with, your pen and paper, or any notes app that you probably would be using. And trust me, you want to take notes. So let's get started. We are not just here to just listen and talk or feel motivated. No, we are here to be rebuilt. So for some of our community members who are in the house, you know very well that we run such programs to ensure that each and every one of us are equipped with necessary skills to enable us as a community. This be handling the thinking and character pillar. So sorry about that. My network got cut off. So, as I was saying, the Skills Lab is an initiative launched by the Impact Tribe where we have four major pillars. We have the thinking and character, we have work and income, and we have the life and society. Last but not least, we have leverage and tools. So we are going to be starting off with the pillar one, thinking and character. So why? Because if you are thinking, like if your thinking is poor, your life will definitely be chaotic. You can have all the tools in the world, but if you lack the character and critical thinking to be able to use certain tools, you will crash. So, for the next few weeks, we as a community are focusing on the mind. And the foundation of that is the critical thinking and decision making aspect of things. So, tonight we are going to tackle various questions of why do biases and misinformation actually control our choices, and most importantly, how do we make better decisions about life, career, and money. So, to guide us through this, we have a phenomenal mind with us today. Let me introduce her. Experience in engineering practice, engineering education, research, and mentoring. She is passionate in individuals. Grace enjoys sharing practical lessons on decision making, resilience, and personal development, personal growth, encouraging others to step into opportunities with courage and clarity. Please, with a round ovation, do me the honor of welcoming our host as our speaker as she takes the floor to do her presentation. You are highly welcome, ma'am. Engineer Grace Aqua, please, are you with us?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, ma'am.
Okay, hi everyone. It's good to be here today. It's good to join you guys here today. Um, I'll just quickly share my screen. How do I share it? I just present. Okay, yeah. So my slides are
Yes,
there.
I have done that, ma'am.
Okay. Are you the one going to control it on your end, or I control it from here? Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna be talking on critical thinking and decision making. I just made my slides as bullet points, so I'll be doing more of talking over the slides. It's just a very simple bullet point, just to get us the basics and understanding of what critical thinking and decision making is. Like, like Wikipedia defines, because we need to, go to Wikipedia and check. Wikipedia defines critical thinking as the process of analyzing available facts, evidences, observations, and arguments to reach sound conclusions or informed choices. So, why are we even talking about this in the first place? Like, why do we even need to talk about this? I wonder, have you ever made a decision quickly? Have you ever made a decision in your life and then you quickly realize that you should have thought about it a bit more carefully? I don't know if there's anyone who has ever had that incident happen to them. Like you make a decision or something happens where you have to make a decision and you just make it quickly, and then later you realize that, oh, I could have thought about this a little bit more. And some people's careers are actually trained for critical thinking, but I want to tell us that critical thinking is not something that people are born with. It's a skill, and it's something that can be inculcated. So you don't just solve problems by diving into it. You solve them by carefully thinking about it before solving it. So the ability to pause, to analyze, and then evaluate the information that is in front of you carefully before making any choices is what is really called critical thinking. So, if we want to develop critical thinking as a skill, when we are faced with any situation in front of us, when we are faced with any challenge, when we're faced with anything that we need to make a decision about, we need to first pause, ask a question, examine everything that is in front of us, check your facts, check your evidence, the observations around you. What are the arguments, balanced arguments around you? And then you can come to sound conclusion and make it. So the goal of critical thinking is actually to form a judgment through the application of rational, skeptical, and unbiased analysis. So you should be able to actually come to your conclusion without having any form of bias or without any form of doubt or fear or any irrationality around you. This is what is known as critical thinking. If your decision or your choices are skewed around biases or skepticism, then at that point you could infer that maybe you did not really critically think about it before making the choices. Now, what are the core skills of a critical thinker? A critical thinker should be able to interpret. You should be able to, so you have the problem in front of you. You should be able to understand your problem carefully. Okay, what is this problem? What is really this situation in front of me? You should be able to analyze it, break it down. What is it telling me? Okay, when did it start? How did it start? Why did it start? You ask your questions, the why, the when, the how, which, whom does this affect? You're beginning to evaluate, judge the credibility, look at the evidence. Okay, what happened? Who said what? If that's in case of when you want to judge things. And then you start to little by little draw reasonable conclusions. So these are the core skills of a critical thinker: the ability to, do interpretation, analysis, evaluation, inference, explanation, and self-regulation. So self-regulation meaning you're not doing it out of emotions, or you're not doing it out of fear or anything that could be considered your own bias, or when people say, oh, that thing was done unfairly and all of that. So I just want us to pause for 1 minute and think, have I made any decision in my life recently where there was some kind of emotions attached to it? Maybe we can just pause for 1 minute. I'm just going to pause for 1 minute and pretend you guys are also thinking about that. So let's think about it. What are the choices I've made recently? And, how did I come about those decisions? We move forward to the habits of a critical thinker. A critical thinker needs to develop things such as curiosity. So you might be saying, okay, how do I make these decisions and all of that? If you want to make all these decisions, you first of all have to, start by being curious. Understanding the why, the how, you have to be curious enough to ask the right questions. Then secondly, you have to be open-minded. I talked to someone recently and the person was like, oh, I'm a very open-minded person. And then I presented my food to the person. The person was just saying a particular kind of food. And the person was like, oh, this food is just wrong. Why are people eating like this? And I'm like, no, when you see a food you don't understand and you see that people are actually eating this thing, you should be able to ask, What is this food? What is it made of? Okay, why do you enjoy it? Where is it most eaten? That's how you learn. That's how you make informed decision. The person was like, no, it's wrong, it's wrong. Like, I was so irritated. I wish I could just slap the person, like, get out. But we have to be civil. And I'm like, you're not even open-minded. So for you to, one of the core habits you need to develop as a critical thinker is being open-minded, because when you're open-minded, you're able to balance arguments. You're able to listen to what the other person wants to say, and you're able to listen to what the other person has to say. You're able to think about what the other person is, you hear from the other person's point of view, and you actually analyze it. That is when you can come into impartial conclusions. And then the next one is systemic thinking. In systemic thinking, you need to break it down. You need to think about it. Okay, what led to what? You start forming judgment based on the patterns. You join A plus B. But some people just dive from point A to point Z. They lost every alphabet in between. And then they'll be like, and don't worry. I don't want to just be comical about this presentation, but I don't know if you guys understand what I mean. When people are just making this, when people are jumping into conclusions, my brother would just laugh when I was a bit little, and he would say, Grace, you're diving into conclusions. That's because I was not applying like systemic thinking in those days, in those ways. But when this thing begins to affect your day-to-day life, when this thing begins to affect your day-to-day activities, then you cannot afford to just fly from point A to point Z, because it's gonna, impact your choices, it's gonna impact your life, it's gonna impact everything around you. So it's good to always develop the habit of systemic thinking. And then the last one is persistence in seeking the truth. Not because the first person has already given you something, then you now go about saying, just because the first person has given you something, or the second person has given you something, and then you just take those two things and just jump on your conclusion, or like I said, fly into conclusions. No, you should be able to be persistent in seeking the truth, and then that also it's like a loop. You go back to being curious. You now have open-mindedness to be able to check point A, point B. You now flow everything together, and this is how you come about being a critical thinker. I'm an engineer, and in engineering, it's mandatory for you to critically analyze things in order to solve problems. Because, like what we used to joke, I have friends who are doctors, and I'll be like, you guys, if you make a mistake, one person dies. If it's a pregnant woman, 2 or 3 people die. But if an engineer makes a mistake, the bridge can fall. And you know what that means if a bridge collapses or a house collapses. So critical thinking is very important. And these are the habits you can inculcate as a person, as an individual, in order to develop this skill. Like I said, it's something that is learned. Now, why do people make poor decisions? People make poor decisions because of things like biases, misinformation, or emotions. Let's look at it. What do bias really mean? What does bias really mean? Bias means, any thinking that is influenced by what we already believe. So you already have an idea in your head. I don't know. Am I sounding very angry? Maybe because I'm thinking of a particular example where that happened. And I was trying to make the person see a point of view, but the person already had an idea in their head, and they're looking for evidence to back up that idea. This is called bias. When you have bias, it's because you have something stuck in your brain, and you don't want to change that idea. You don't want to think about something out of the box. That's when you're closed-minded. You just have that bias, and then there's this popular saying that if I tell you now, I could have created an activity, but I didn't know if this was going to be an interactive section. Create an activity and tell everybody, can you find the blue balls? In your brain, you've already registered a blue ball, right? Or blue balls, or counting everything that is blue. And immediately your brain begins to pick up looking for things that are blue. That is what bias does. When you already have something in your head, you begin to think about getting information that is going to prove that point. And by the time you start doing that already, you already are out of critical thinking. You're no longer thinking critically, and it can lead to a bad decision. The next one is misinformation. So when you don't hear everything or you don't read everything, you just like you just go you just take things at face values without checking, especially in these days of social media. Somebody can, or even AI, when people put things out there and you just absorb it without thinking. But a critical thinker, when the person looks at a video or hears an information, they'll say, okay, who says this? What is the evidence to support this? And even when you see evidence, you say, okay, can this evidence be verified? With all these things, you can save yourself from misinformation, because misinformation can lead to poor decisions. Imagine that you want to invest in a business, and because you've heard or you got a misinformation that this business is thriving, you don't check your facts. You don't check you don't do your research and verify the sources of even your facts. Your fact has to be verified. You then fall into the loop of misinformation and make poor decisions. And then the last but not the least in why people make poor decisions is because of emotions. When you start putting your emotions into it, it's not only about romantic emotions, but when fear gets in the way, or when you're excited and in the midst of your excitement, you just promise somebody something, you've made a poor decision. Or maybe urgency or pressure. There may be peer pressure around you, or even pressure from your family, pressure from your situation. And because of that, you're not thinking, you're not able to pause and think. Remember, in the beginning, we said for critical thinking, you should always be able to pause. First of all, pausing is a very good thing you need to develop as critical thinkers. You pause. But when your emotions are all over the place, you're not able to pause, first of all, to think, especially if you're under pressure. So try to make sure you're calm. That's why people will be like, okay, take a deep breath, or you can just sleep, pause for that night until the next morning, if you know that your emotions are everywhere. So these are ways you can equip yourself. These are the tools, by pausing, by sleeping, by going for a walk. So, clear your head before you make any decision if you know you're under pressure. If it's about fear, do whatever you need to do to take away fear from you. Maybe praying. For those who are religious, you can just pray about it. You can take deep breaths. You can talk to someone. These are things. And then, like they say, don't make a decision when you're very happy. When excitement comes in the way, all these things can lead to poor decision making. I talked about bias and information. Okay, I put a slide here on bias and information verification. So always try to check the source of your information. I think I've talked about that already. Where is your source coming from? Is it credible? Is it a credible source? What are the facts saying? So if you want to look at evidence, what are the facts saying? What's the data saying? What's the research saying? These days, people just publish out there, especially in this age of AI. People just publish things and articles like, oh my God, maybe because I'm an engineer, right? And, because of my level right now in research, trained to do deep critical thinking and information. But I was arguing with someone, and I think I'm always arguing, right? From this, I'm not always arguing anyway. I always have meaningful discussion with people. And then I was talking to someone, and the person was talking about something that, oh, it is a fact. It is a fact. And I kept saying, why will you say it's a fact? And the person just went on Google, typed the thing, and AI brought out whatever the AI brought out. And I told the person, why are you putting this thing here? And when the person, like the information the AI brought out was not really clear, right? And by the time we now did the search better, it didn't give the person what the person had in their head. And the person kept trying to tweak the AI to say what is in the person's head. And I'm like, okay, that's a bias already. You already have an information in your head, and you're trying to prompt the AI to bring out what is in your head. But thank God, at least That AI was like, it's a very optimized one, and it was getting resources based on actual published research, and the person could not find what could back up their evidence. So now when you're taking sources and evidence, you need to make sure it's valid sources. It's not just things that people put online just because they wanted to talk. This is how you are able to, make good decisions. Now, decision making tools. Uh, if you want to look at decision making tools, there are three structured thinking tools. You have to look at the first principles thinking. Now, breaking a problem down to the basic truths. So, if you want to take a job now, if you have a job offer, instead of asking, should I take this job? Which is what everybody asks. Even my younger ones will call me, Grace, should I take this job? Then that conversation will become a 1 hour conversation because I will not say yes or no. You need to ask things like, what do I value most in my career? What I even tell people right now is I tell them to ask themselves, what are your values? Who are you? First of all, who are you? What are your values? Now, does this job form around your values? Is it going to add to your values? Does the values, companies always have value statements or mission and vision statements and value statements. Do their values align with your own value as an individual? So in order for decision making tools, remember we're talking about decision making tools, first principle thinking. When you want to do first principle thinking, you need to check what are your values. Let's take an example of the job thing. What do I value most in my career? They'll say, where are you going? This is not an aspire to acquire kind of thing. I don't like aspire to acquire. It's about critically thinking. If you know yourself, you know what makes you happy, you know what makes you sad, you understand your values to your core, then you think about that job and say, what do I value most in my career? Maybe at that point in your life, what you value most is money, and the company is giving you a lot of money. Please hop on the job, like fly on the job, take it, as long as it doesn't negate your value. But when you look at it and you see that it doesn't align with what you value most in your career, you go to the next question. What skill do I want to develop? Will taking this job help me to develop that skill or to improve on that skill? That's another question. The third question you ask yourself, instead of just saying, should I take this job? No. What is the environment of this job? I tell my younger ones, toxicity is very, very real. If your job environment is not going to allow you grow, if you don't have colleagues that help your mental health, please run away, because at the end of the day, you'll be sleeping and the only thing that is keeping you in that job is the money. But in your dreams, you'll be seeing the money floating, but you'll be seeing yourself running. Why? Because your environment is so toxic and you cannot even breathe very well. I've seen people leave, jobs that pay very well to go for a smaller job. Why? Because they had peace of mind. This is after critical thinking. They were now able to make a decision. So your first principle is to break down your question in order to seek your basic truth. Break down your question. If you want to start a business, don't just say, oh, I want to start a business because I want to make money. No. What are your plans? Because you've already understood your value. Everything starts with your value and who you are at the core and where you want to be. Now, will starting this business take me to where I'm going to? Or is it because I just listened to a motivational talk? Sorry, not motivational talk. I used to call it aspire to acquire talk. I just listened to it and they were like, oh, hop on AI. AI is the new money. And you just jump on it. But you wanted to be something else. So these are how you pieces and dissect things before you make decisions. The second one is your decision tree. You can now say, okay, what are your possible outcomes? If I go through plan A, what is going to be the outcome? If I take plan B, what will be the outcome? So let's imagine you have 2 job offers and you want to know which one to choose. You need to be able to, or you have two or three different opportunities in front of you. You're thinking, should I go for further studies, or should I apply for a job, or should I start a business, or should I become a social media person? Now lay it down. If I go for a job, this is what I stand to gain. This. Just write it all down. So it starts from the job. They say, I'll gain this, I'll gain that, I'll get this money, I'll get this skill, I'll meet this network. Write it all down. So that's like a pathway for option A. For your option B, write down the pathway too. For option C, write out the pathway. Now that is forming a decision tree. You're able to form the decision tree, and you're able to visibly look at your outcome and your consequences. So it makes you to see clearly the consequences of your choices, either option A, B, C. And by the time you map it down, it may look like a very funny activity at first, but these trees are all branched out. The tree becomes all branched out, and you can visibly see that, oh, this will be my end point if I choose option B. And you like that. So you see, you'll be able to make that decision with clarity. And even if tomorrow someone tells you, all your mates are married, why did you not marry? Oh, sorry, let's not use marriage. All your mates are working, why did you choose to go to school? Or all your mates are getting a PhD, why did you choose to be a social media influencer? You can stand in certainty and with clarity on that decision, because you have already mapped out your future. If you decided to go for further studies, you have mapped out your future if you decided to take a job, and you've mapped out your future if you've decided to go for social media, and you've seen the one you like best. So also the decision tree helps us not to get confused, or this thing that happens these days, the fear of missing out. You have this fear of missing out in yourself, and you're now confused that, oh, this person is doing this person is doing this, I'm missing out. If I don't do this, it means I'm missing out. So you don't jump on every bandwagon that comes, or you don't jump on every new trend that comes, because you have mapped out your decision tree. So if there's anything very important, map out your decision tree. But remember, in your decision tree, you are applying your first principles when you're asking those questions. So if I choose option A, what does it stand to get me in line with your values and all of this? So you see, they're all linked together. Then the last one, your cost benefit analysis. You now begin to ask, what do I gain? What might I lose? What are the long-term effects? All this thing plays out, when you map out your decision tree. These are the questions you're asking. What do I gain? What do I lose? You may realize that at the end of the day, you may say, okay, instead of going for further studies now, I can decide to go into paid employment for the next 2 years. And in 2 years, I've gotten the financial empowerment I need in order to go to my next level, which is the further studies. So you now weigh out the risk, because if you had just gone for further studies immediately, you may now be struggling financially. So by the time you do your cost benefit analysis, what you stand to gain, what you stand to lose, but then yes, you're pausing out your long dream of going for further studies. However, because of the clarity from your decision tree, you now know that, okay, this is what you stand to gain in the long term. So cost benefit analysis, you're looking at, what do I gain? What might I lose? And what are the long-term effects? All these things give you clarity, and you're able to critically analyze your situation and make your decisions. I hope we're together, and I hope this is even making any kind of sense. Now, I think I just have a few slides. I think it's just one more slide or two. Okay, they say, yes, ma'am, you're okay. Thank you. Now, apply your tools. You're going to apply your tools in your real life. You can apply your tools in terms of career, in terms of relocation, in terms of entrepreneurship. Let me give a very short story. It's a personal story on how I applied something like this in my life. I think I apply it all the way in my life. I think too deeply. I think too much, and I think too deeply. But yeah, I always try to critically think about situations. Now, I wanted to go for further studies. After I did my master's, I wanted to go for my PhD. But at that time, I had gone back to Nigeria. So I was back home and I wanted to back for my PhD. But then I had some very interesting younger ones. And I said, these younger ones need some kind of mentorship. I mentor a lot of people, and there's always growth when I mentor them. However, I know that charity begins at home. I also want to mentor my younger ones and give them the kind of guidance I didn't have and what they would seek to pay people outside. I can always mentor them at home. So I took the bold decision. I moved back into my parents' house and I stayed there and I took up a job. And I said I was going to do this for 5 years. And I remember telling my younger ones, you have just 5 years. The distance between me and my younger ones was like 15 years. So they were very small. Like we call them second generation children. They're very tiny compared to the rest of us. So and they had needed to write their WAEC. And I said, you have just within this time frame to write your WAEC. That means you need to pass in one sitting. I don't want to hear you failed one course or one subject. And I was always, hitting them, like not like I was strict, but I just kept telling them because I had to sit down with them. I was always talking to them that this is about your life, this is about your career, this is when I have time to be your mentor. But I kid you not, by the time this time lapse is over, I'm leaving. I need to go. And luckily, they had sense. God gave me younger ones that have sense, and they were following the plan. So it was me mapping out because I had mapped out my decision tree. I had thought about the whole thing because I had to look at my cost benefit analysis. If I left these people now, if I left my younger ones now, yes, my career will go well, but I didn't know if they would have had the guidance they have right now, where they are right now in their lives. So I needed to, pause something and stay with them for that time. It's not like I was just sitting there in the house and looking at them. No, I also was building my own career, but in something else. I took up a job and I was doing something else. But I also had their own plan mapped out. And these people did me proud. In the timeline, they had gotten what I needed them to get. They had started university and I was able to comfortably live. And I'm where I am now and they are where they are now. So what I'm trying to say is that this critical analysis and this critical thinking and everything we've discussed today can be used in every aspect of your life, even as simple as planning your family life or planning your career life or simple decisions. Or is it the case where you want to start a business? You need to think. I started a poultry farm and I was thinking long term, I want to be able to leave the country and these children who don't have any work or job, I want them to be able to use this poultry business to fund their lifestyle instead of asking me for money for everything. And we started the business. My younger ones were just in SS2 or SS3. They were still in high school, but I made one of them a farm manager. I made the other one a sales manager because we had mapped it out. It was so funny in those days because we used to have like managerial meeting at home. I'll tell them, okay, you report. What's the status of the farm? And we were doing large scale farming. It wasn't small scale farming. That's because we were able to critically analyze things. We paused, we did research. I did research. I checked things and I decided, okay, this poultry farming was going to be the best one. It was easy for them. If I could get the customer base at the first instance, they will be able to maintain the customer base. That was what I did for them. Don't ask me about that business now because they became big girls and decided to choose their own businesses. So that business has flopped, but it served its purpose at the time. So that's just what I'm just trying to give you examples to lighten up the mood and also to tell you where you can apply the tools. So think about your own life. Where do you think you can apply critical thinking? Where do you think you can do? Are you trying to relocate? Are you trying to go into employment? Are you trying to start a business? You need to think. I want you to reflect. Pause. Now ask yourself, what information do I need to start this business? It's not about, I was talking to someone and the person was like, as long as somebody else is doing that is making money. No, you don't know what that person is doing behind closed door that is making them money. If you want to do your business, start with calculating your return on investment, such that you know that, okay, it will take me 2 years to break even. But yet you see someone that made it in 1 month, and you're now thinking that, okay, if you enter into that business, you too, you make it in 1 month. No, the person must have kept structures to make them make it in 1 month. So these are how you can critically analyze your thing. Ask the right questions and check it with what you have. And if you don't have all the necessary tools, you can say, okay, what am I missing? What information do I need? Then you go out and seek those information. Remember that when you're seeking those information, it should be free of bias. It should be free of misinformation. It should be free of emotional, anything. Then you ask yourself, what are the possible risks of my choices and the possible benefit of my choices? What biases might be influencing my thinking? These are the things that you apply, and then you're able to make your decision. So I think I'm on the last slide, right? So I think I did a framework here for y'all to see. For the framework, I said define the issue, what decision must be made. Then you gather your evidence. What facts, what data or information do I have? Check your bias. Okay, am I being influenced by assumption? Am I influenced by peer pressure? Do I want to be an influencer because everybody's an influencer? Am I being influenced by fear? Maybe if I don't do this, I will not eat tomorrow, or something, just fear, maybe even the fear of missing out. After you check your biases, evaluate your options. What are the possible choices? So you don't need to stick to option A or that plan that comes to your head. You can now check, okay, do I have any other choice? Apart from this decision now, or this thing I want to do, are there other choices? And then look at your risk and your benefits. Then make your decision. After you've done all of these things, make your decision. Choose the option that supports you with clear reasoning. I talked about it earlier on. Options that you can now stand with certainty that this is my plan and this is my choice. After you've done your decision tree and you've mapped out everything, now make your decision. Now, when you make your decision, there's what we call reflecting in teaching. When we're teaching, because even when we finish teaching students, when we lecture students, we need to go back and reflect based on students' feedback. When you reflect, you're like, okay, what did I do wrong? What did I do right? With students able to learn. If students give you feedback, you're like, okay, what could I have done better? This is called reflecting. Now, in my next lecture, I'll be able to now modify my next lecture based on the feedback I've gotten. So by the time you make your decision, you need to always have a time to pause and reflect. You need to also have to be able to pause and reflect. Reflect and learn what worked. So, you've gone through all these processes. You made your decision after you've checked all your choices and your options and your decision tree. Now, when you implement, you need to be reflecting on it. You need to be checking your feedback. Okay, I reflect. What lesson did I learn from this? What worked? What did not work? How can I improve? And then you go back to your loop again and start modifying things or adjusting things. Or if you're like, oh, this didn't even work, you go back to the beginning. Make your decision again from the beginning. So reflection should be a very good practice in our life. In as much as we're critically and making decisions, always make room for reflection. Always make room for reflection. Sorry. What do I want us to take back? I want you to remember, if there's anything you want to remember from this session, good decisions come from clear thinking. And with every tool that we have discussed here, I hope you're able to have taken something that gives you clarity when you're thinking. I hope you're able to take something that can make you to clarify your thoughts process. So critical thinking is not just maybe an academic skill. It's not just something you learn. I don't even think you learn it on the four walls of university. It is a life skill. It's something that helps you evaluate information. It helps you to recognize your biases. So when you're reflecting, by the time you reflect, sometimes after you've taken your decision and you pause to reflect, you may now say, oh, I think I was a bit partial in this decision. I think, or you say, oh, I think this particular thing, because I know person XYZ, it actually influenced my choice. You see? So critical thinking is something that helps us to evaluate information, recognize biases, and make thoughtful decisions. The quality of our decision depends on the quality of our thinking. So we need to train our minds to think clearly such that we can build not only better decisions, but also a better and stronger character. Because if you're able to do critical thinking, it builds even your character as a person. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the session. Hmm. So,
All right. Thank you so much for your session, Madam. So we open up for questions. And when I place, you not show your face all this time. Would have loved to see your fine face. Not fair.
okay,
Ah,
can you see my face?
yeah, we can see your face definitely.
All right.
Okay, so we have so we're going to open the ground for questions. Does any of us have any questions to ask Madam Grace on a very much wonderful session on decisions, on clarity, on critical thinking? What really got to me was the part where you said all of us used to aspire to inspire, all those aspire to aspire quotes and the rest. I totally relate with that. There's sometimes that you don't want to hear certain things. You just want to be there. Not every time you want to just hear, okay, you can do this, you can do that, you can do a whole lot of things. Sometimes you just want to hear that, just want the steps. So we thank you so much for this wonderful session. If you have a question, I'm giving you like 2 minutes to drop it on the chat box on the comments section. If you have a question, please drop it on the comment section so that we will allow Madam Grace to go and have a wonderful night rest. If you have a question, guys, please drop. And while you are dropping your question, also drop what key thing you took out of this session. What's your takeaway? What key thing did you did you benefit from today's session? Are you going to take home it? For me, is that we need to plan. No matter how tiring it is, no matter how no matter how it feels like it's just a whole lot of things. It's important that you plan. It's important that you plan your time, you plan your goals. What things do you want to achieve? What things do you want to do? It's important that you plan all of those things. And we are so glad. Any other questions? You guys drop your questions and everything that you have gathered from today's session. Okay, I have a question personally. Okay, so you mentioned something about having I've forgotten how you call it, like the planning tree per se, whereby you align this. You put in various goals that you want to achieve, and it's important to plan. So, what if what you planned how will I put it? What if what you planned for before is no longer what you need to do right now? You understand the dynamics of time, how this is fast changing, the AI spot everywhere, everyone is into that space. You understand that. But what if the plan you had before is not the plan that is right now? How do you match your previous plan and your future plan? I think that's the question I want to ask.
Okay. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay,
I can
that's
hear
going to
you.
be sure. 'Cause my laptop can be funny. So, That's why, first of all, I, you need to know who you are at the core. I just recently started preaching this part because of the wave out there. You first of all need to know who you are at the core, because when you know who you are at the core, you know what makes you happy, what makes you sad, you know how flexible you can be. Now, by the time you know that, the next thing is when you have a goal, right? When you have a goal, you have a place you want to go to. So, they used to talk about 10-year plan, 5-year plan, or 10-year goal, 5-year goal. Now you have an ultimate goal of where you want to be. Maybe your ultimate decision is, I want to be financially free at age XYZ. That's your goal. Now, with the whole changing trend of the whole AI, today AI is the one around. So tomorrow they'll tell you, oh, hop on cybersecurity, this hop on. So your plans begin to change. What you do is, since you have a long-term vision for yourself, you have your values, you have your standards, you have a long-term vision of yourself and long-term goal, you need to reflect at every point in time. That's why I said reflection is key. And I recently held a session about goal setting and goal reset. And I'm like, it's better to close your or put your goals in terms of quarterly goals, especially with the changing time. You need to put it quarterly. So at the end of the first quarter, you now see that your plan that you planned is no longer working because something has changed. The times have changed. The trends have changed. You sit back, you reflect, and you modify for the second quarter. By the third quarter, if your plans are still, valid, you can use them for the third quarter. If they are not still valid, when you're doing that reflection, you tweak it again and then you move. But now, in tweaking and changing your plans, like I said, make sure they still align with your core. Because if they don't align with your core, you feel overwhelmed, you feel tired, you feel frustrated because you're always changing and changing and changing things. Do you get what I mean? And I don't know if that answered the question. Impact tribe. Hello, guys. So I don't know if there's any other person among the audience who has questions. Is there any other person with a question? Oh, I'm glad you found the session interesting. Okay.
All
So
right,
I
thank you so much.
answered the question. Yeah. I said you need to do your reflection every quarter of the year and try to change your decisions based on that. But or try to replan based on that, but it should still be you at the core of it. It should still have your core values when you're changing them. Even though you're going to be overwhelmed. Yeah.
So I have a question, another
Okay, sure.
question. While we are around, I think this should be the last question so that we could round them up. All right. So, are there any specific frameworks or tools that you could use when you are being faced with a complex problem? I understand that thinking is very, very important. That's why we have graduate session, the critical thinking session. But what frameworks do we use to guide you? So when you are faced with a very difficult, a complex problem or a very key decision you have to make, how do you navigate that?
I didn't hear you. You were kind of breaking.
Okay, okay, my bad. All right, so I was asking a question. My question was that How do you what are the specific frameworks or guidelines that you do use when you are faced with a very complex problem, or you are faced with a very serious decision that you have to make? What guidelines do you have to keep in mind? What framework do you use to make better decisions? That's my question. Did you get it, Madam Grace?
Yes, I got it.
All right.
So, um, for me, you have to like observe. When you observe, you try to understand the situation, then you now decide, and before you act and implement. I don't. That's the kind of framework I would say, if I want to put it, because I know that critical thinking needs for you to pause, and choose things. So you have to first observe, and then you have to, by observing, you're gathering information, you're gathering facts, you're gathering things, and then you now understand your situation, understand where you are at, your lifestyle, your goals, and everything. Then you now decide and then act. So that's it. Or you can also decide to do your cost benefit analysis. What do I stand to gain? Or what do I stand to lose? That's another way that I try to check if my decision is very complex. I'm like, okay, what does this offer me? And what do I lose by doing this? Do I lose my morals? Do I lose my values? Do I lose my mental health? Or do I gain a lot of money? Maybe I may gain a lot of money and then just a little bit of mental health will be lost. I'm like, can I afford to lose that amount of mental health because the money is so big? Maybe yes. Or you can think about your goals. You think about what you need. So at the end of the day, I think it's critical thinking for this decision making. You still need to think about all these things. But I think the best one would be, what do I stand to gain? That's the easiest one. What do I stand to gain? What do I stand to lose? Yeah.
So much, ma'am. Thank you so much for this wonderful class. We sincerely appreciate. And I think we will be ending today's session. And to each and one of us that joined in, thank you so much. Blessed Adole Shak. A lot of you guys, I cannot pronounce your names in particular. But thank you so much. Thank you so much, Engineer Grace. I really appreciate that you you choose to join us today. Thank you so much, Onyi, in the background, and for this wonderful session. And I pray that God helps us, God guides us as a community in our various doings and everything that we do. We usually end with closing prayer whenever we have any of our events online. So since I am from the back end, I'll just have a brief word of prayer. All right. Thank you so Lord. Thank you, Father, for a wonderful session like this. We thank you for all the knowledge that we have gathered. We ask Holy Spirit that may you baby tells me you guide us. And for everything that we have invested into this, from the speakers to the planners, to the organizers, to everyone who joined in, Father, we ask Holy Spirit that may you provide, may you replenish, may you help us and guide us in this community that is yours. Thank you, Lord, for answering our prayers. For in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Thank you
Thank you
for
so
having
much.
me. Bye
Thank you so,
bye.
so much. Bye bye, mom.